So my name is Matt Easterday. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Education and Social Policy at Northwestern. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about why even STEM people like us should worry about civic education. Now, many of us became scientists because we want to make the world a better place, to solve our greatest problems like environmental destruction, poverty, and war. But policy gets in the way. So for example, consider how we might create an environmentally sustainable city. Now, to build such a city, we'd have to train engineers to redesign the land, water, and information systems of the city. And to some extent, we do that. So we teach them to design membrane filtration systems to purify the water, but not to change economic policy to promote conservation. We train them to design renewable energy systems that reduce carbon, but not to change energy policies that subsidize fossil fuels. And we train them to design mass transit systems to save energy, but not how to change zoning policy to make that possible. Now, we do teach engineers about complex mechanical systems, so they know that if they change, say, the axle of a car, they're going to have to modify the chassis as well. And we teach them that to design well, they also need to communicate effectively as a team. But we don't teach them that sustainable infrastructure may also require changes in policy. So for example, if you want widespread mass transit, you might also need a car tax. Now, even when we do teach engineers about policy, we don't teach them how to change it, and even if they did know how to change it, they couldn't do it alone. So really, we're left with engineers who are at the mercy of policy problems, not ones that can solve them. So in short, good technology and bad policy means no impact. And in a democracy, the only way to change that is if we have engaged citizens, and that requires civic education. Now, civic education raises a number of concerns, so let me address just a few. So first of all, we're not talking about the old civics, boring textbooks on parliamentary procedure. We're talking about actively engaging students in the democratic process. Second, civic education is not about teaching students what the right policies are. So probably many of you think that sustainable cities are a good idea, but others might feel that the economic costs outweigh the benefits, or that there's other more important democratic principles at stake. So civic education is not about indoctrination, it's about giving students the skills that they need to make well-informed decisions about these issues. And we can't shy away from teaching controversial issues because the alternative is apathy, and that's far, far worse. Civic education is also not, we're going to somehow teach everyone to be rational and end politics. The issue is that right now we have very disengaged, disorganized citizens and very organized private interests. And really this shouldn't surprise us. I mean, if the NSF didn't support scientific education, we wouldn't have many scientists. So when we don't support civic education, we don't get many engaged citizens. But just as in science, if we provide a general civic literacy for all and further opportunities for a few truly engaged, we really can make a huge difference. So what exactly is civics? Well, it's generally agreed upon that civic education means creating citizens that are well-informed, that can act politically and in their communities, and that possess civic and moral virtue. Now, not only is it essential that we do this, it's even within our mandate. So if I could quote from the Cyber Learning program call, cyber learning will cultivate a citizenry that makes informed decisions and judgments about war, peace, economics, and health, will result in a more actively engaged and productive citizenry, and will promote the abilities needed for engaged and productive citizenship. So if we want to change this equation, and civic education is one way to do that, what exactly would that involve? So specifically, what would a cyber-civic education program require? And I would argue that it needs three things. You have to teach students how to be analysts, advocates, and activists. So analysts who can weigh evidence to understand policy, advocates who can communicate complex policy ideas to a wider audience, and activists who can work together with other citizens to demand better policy. So how might cyber learning go about teaching policy argument? Policy World is an educational game with an embedded tutor that I created in order to teach students to make evidence-based policy arguments. Now in this game, the student has to make recommendations to a senator and debate against a computer opponent. Along the way, they search for information including scientific reports, opinion pieces, journalistic reports, and they construct causal models of the evidence according to these different sources. At the end of each level, They then have to choose policy positions, explain how their positions will affect the desired outcome, and then support their positions with evidence. So in studies with Policy World, we find out that not only is it a good way to create educational technology by combining tutors and games, but you actually can teach the skills of policy analysis that students need to become well-informed citizens. But being well-informed is not enough. You also have to be able to communicate these ideas to a wider audience. So we're designing the new civic journalism project to teach students how to do this. And in today's world of more democratized media, this also means mastering new kinds of digital and computational literacies. So this project consists of 3 interrelated classes. In the civic journalism class, we're teaching high school students in immigrant communities to create 3-minute video profiles of how people in their community are affected by a public issue. While this is going on, university journalism students are helping the high school students gain the technical skills of journalism and also doing their own in-depth reporting about how these issues affect the community more broadly. Simultaneously, undergraduate policy students are going to be using programming and animation tools to create interactive policy briefs that help explain these issues and are helping the high school students to choose story angles that connect to the policy issues. Then these video profiles, in-depth reports, and interactive policy briefs will appear alongside each other on the web and through other kinds of social media like Facebook, Twitter, and mobile platforms. So taken together, these classes are teaching students how to communicate policy ideas to a wider audience. But it's still not enough to be well-informed and to be able to communicate your ideas. You also need to be able to work with other citizens to make changes in policy. And while we don't have a really great example of how to do this, Design for America provides the template. This is a project started by Liz Gerber at Northwestern that teaches undergraduate designers and technologists how to work together with local institutions and community groups to solve technology and design problems. So undergraduate design teams have developed products that help fight hospital infections, that help children cope with diabetes, and help save millions of tons of wastewater in university cafeteria. After only 2 years, this extracurricular program has led to 2 startups and spread to 15 universities across the nation. But more importantly, it shows the powerful, untapped potential of engaging technology and design students by showing them how they can use their abilities to address a social need. However, there is this limitation. And that's that DFA projects only work when they're consistent with existing policy and business practice. So when students come up with innovations such as reducing wastewater that are undermined by policy in which the costs of pollution are externalized, then the students find that they don't have the tools they need to proceed, which is precisely the problem of the sustainable city. Now, nevertheless, DFA does provide a template for how we can practice engaged citizenship. If we could combine this with analysis and advocacy, would provide exactly the kind of civic education that engineers need to solve policy problems. So if I could just briefly sum up, we need to change this equation, and we can do it with civic education. We can teach engineers and all students to understand how policy affects technology and teach them how to communicate to engage the public and to work together with other citizens to demand better policy so that technology will actually have an impact. If we want innovations like sustainable cities, then we need to fund cyber-civic research to create the engaged citizens and engineers who can create the technology and demand the policy needed to make an impact. Now, changes in our political system have made civic education imperative, and advances in technology like tutoring, social media, open educational resources now make it possible to meet such a formidable educational challenge. So Cyber-Civics has the potential not only to increase the impact of science and technology, but to help us solve the greatest problems facing our society. Thank you.